everyone, my name is Muskan Mahes and this is my presentation which summarizes my analysis on predicting employee attrition at Frito-Lay. So what is the business objective? Employee attrition is a costly problem for Frito-Lay. It was estimated that attrition costs between 50% to 400% of an employee's salary. Therefore, the goal of the study was to identify which factors most influence attrition, predict which employees are at risk of leaving, and estimate the potential financial savings from implementing a predictive model by using machine learning methods. So the dataset overview consists of 870 employees and 35 employee-related variables. These included both numeric and categorical variables, which you can see down below. Next, we'll look at the attrition summary. So I asked how many employees left versus how many stayed. Here we can see that out of 870 employees, about 16.1% have left, while 83.9% have stayed. This means roughly 1 in every 6 employees have left the company. Therefore, this imbalance is important because most employees stay. So our model needs to be evaluated carefully on certain metrics that will be discussed further down. Next, we'll be looking at the numeric insights overview. Here are some key numeric variables that you should note. And here we can see a histogram. When we're looking at this histogram of employee age, most employees at Frito-Lay are between 30 and 40 years old. The distribution then tapers off among older employees, which is common, but we can also notice that both younger and mid-career employees have a higher attrition. So this suggests to us that different retention strategies might be needed for early career versus experienced staff. Then I wanted to look at the demographic insights overview. Here are some key categorical variables to note. And here is a chart that shows the distribution of employees by job role. I wanted to see which jobs are most concentrated in the organization. In other words, where is most of the workforce clustered? As you can see, the largest groups are sales executive, research scientists, and laboratory technicians. These roles together represent the majority of Frito-Lay's workspace. In contrast, smaller groups like human resources and research directors make up a smaller portion of the employees. So understanding this distribution is important for two reasons. First, it shows where most of the company's talent is concentrated, and second, it tells us where a change in turnover rates could have the largest impact on operations or even cost. In the next few slides, I have a few visualizations that compares the relationship of attrition to certain features. So here, this visualization shows how attrition varies across different job roles. The highest attrition rate appears among sales representative and human resource employees. So these job roles may have a higher stress or even lower pay, which makes them more likely to experience turnover. In contrast, managers and research directors have the lowest attrition, suggesting that their experience may increase retention. Next, I wanted to view attrition versus environment satisfaction. So we can see from this bar plot, on the left, we have employees who had left the company, and on the right, those who had stayed. The pattern is pretty clear. Employees who stayed reported higher levels of environment satisfaction, while those who have left tended to have lower or even a medium satisfaction score. So this tells us that how employees feel about their work environment. Things like management support or even team climate plays a big role in whether they decide to stay or leave. Therefore, job satisfaction and even work environment are critical non-financial factors in retention. Next, I wanted to view what are the top 3 factors affecting attrition. So the top 3 differentiating variables were monthly income, monthly rate, and daily rate, all compensation-related metrics. Lastly, I wanted to see attrition versus monthly income. When comparing against monthly income, there's a clear pattern. Employees who left had significantly lower income levels. This suggests that compensation plays a critical role in employee retention, and pay satisfaction is a strong predictor of whether someone will stay or leave. Next slides will be about the 2 models that I built. The first model that I built was the K-nearest model, also known as KNN model. Here's the output, but from here, the only 3 results that we'll be looking at are accuracy, sensitivity, and specificity. So the way I did this was that I used a 70-30 train test split, and I set K to equal 3. The KNN model achieved 82% of accuracy, meaning it correctly predicted attrition for most employees. However, its sensitivity was only 12%, so it missed many of the employees who actually left. And its specificity was 96%, meaning it never falsely flagged someone who stayed. So this model performed well overall, but it's left less effective at identifying its true leavers. The next model that I built was the naive Bayes model, and as again, from the output, we'll be only looking at the accuracy, sensitivity, and specificity. So from here, its accuracy was 83%, its sensitivity was 57%, which meant that it identified more than half of the potential leavers, and its specificity was at 88%. So this means that the model correctly identified more employees who were about to leave and didn't misclassify that many employees who stayed. So the balance of this model makes it more effective and predictive. Here we'll just see a quick side-by-side comparison what I just had noted previously. So as I said, sensitivity measures how well the model correctly identified which employees left. So KNN correctly identified a very few factor of it, while naive Bayes correctly identified more than half of those who left. And then specificity measures how well the model identified employees who stayed. So the KNN model identified 96% of those who stayed, and naive Bayes model correctly identified 88% of those who stayed. Though in practical terms, we would use the naive Bayes model as it caught almost every potential resignation while avoiding any unnecessary interventions. Therefore, this makes it a more useful model for HR to use. So you may be asking at this point, what does specificity, what does accuracy, what does even sensitivity have to do with attrition? Well, this slide will summarize the financial impact of each retention strategy. So here's a table I built, which is based on the assumption that could possibly happen at your company. Say that we have 1,000 employees, and your turnover rate is 20%. So 200 are expected to leave. And the cost to replace these employees is $15,000. But we offer $200 to those who are predicted to leave. So our incentive prevents 20% of leavers. So using these numbers, we can estimate how each model performs financially. So the KNN, which identified few high-risk employees, has a modest impact. It prevents about 5 leavers for a net savings of about $60,000, while the naive Bayes does a much better job at this. It targets about 210 employees, and it prevents about 23 leavers, generating about $300,000 in net savings after accounting for the incentives. Finally, if we gave $200 to every employee, the total cost would rise to about $200,000, but we would still save about $400,000 overall, meaning that even a universal incentive could be cost-effective under these assumptions. So the main takeaway is that predicting modeling allows Frito-Lay to focus incentives efficiently, and it allows them to achieve a similar saving for far less than what you have to spend. So now here's the insights and business impact estimates. So the attrition rate was 16%, which implies a significant financial impact. Given that replacing an employee costs 50 to 400% of their salary, their turnover can cost about $4 to $30 million per year at Frito-Lay. So to mitigate this, we can stimulate a targeted incentive program. So if HR offers about $200 of a retention incentive to employees flagged as high risk by the naive Bayes model, and if that prevented even 10 employees from leaving, Frito-Lay could save $300,000 to $2.6 million annually. And we can back this up by the data that shows that employee engagement and fair pay are the strongest predictors for retention. So lastly, based on the findings, I recommend that Frito-Lay conduct employee surveys to address low satisfaction drivers. I recommend that you implement targeted retention incentives for high-performing employees flagged by the model, and to provide mentorship programs for new hires, as early engagement reduces turnover risk. These actions, supported by the naive Bayes model, will allow HR to act strategically and reduce attrition cost. So thank you for your time. That will be it, and I hope you have a great day.